And so welcome to the show. We are today at the Biohacking Congress in Miami. I'm here with the wonderful Dr. Christopher Shade and from Quicksilver Scientific.
Yes.
You are the Grand Poobah President, CEO.
Grand Poobah, founder, CEO, formulator, bottle washer.
Chief Scientific
Chief
Officer.
Scientific Officer.
All the things.
All the things.
And so your booth, I would say, is a highlight at this event.
Well, thank
You've got
you.
this beautiful position in the back of the room.
Oh, I know, and you can
Gorgeous array
see
of
the,
products.
the ocean crashing.
Yes, they've got
behind
the ocean behind them. Like literally, it's the prime spot.
Yeah, it really
But more
is.
importantly, it's the products.
It's the prime products.
It's the prime products. And so we're going to talk about detoxification and longevity.
Yeah. We call detoxification of gerontogens to increase
Love
lifespan.
that.
What a great word.
Gerontogens.
Gerontogen.
That's the
Generating geront.
It's the best gerontology related word I've ever heard.
I mean, I loved
Gerontogens.
inflammagens.
Yeah.
But then there's gerontogens. Jeez.
So tell us about the gerontogens. What are they?
So these are things that are aging you at an accelerated rate. Now, all toxins are getting into your system, and they're toxic because they block different reactions that you have. Now, if you look at a real significant one, like cadmium, the heavy metal.
Yeah.
Cadmium, even the EPA, or maybe it's the CDC, will say that you're going to have a shorter lifespan if your blood cadmium is over 0.7 parts per billion, which isn't even all that high. Usually they're like, gobs per bucket before it bothers you. And they're like, no, this really does.
This is really bad.
And so it goes into the cells and it damages the telomeres, the end caps of the chromosomes that determine a lot about our lifespan and health. So it's called telomere attrition. So they nail those, they go down, and that stimulates mitochondrial dysfunction in the cell. And the mitochondria go all wonky, and they turn the cell into what's called a senescent cell.
The infamous zombie cell.
The infamous zombie cell. So zombie cells stop growing, and they start secreting pro-inflammatory cytokines that recruit other cells into this zombie-like thing. That is like, zombie bites you, you're a zombie.
Yeah.
So that's the zombie cell. And the zombie cell is created by the toxin. And then the zombie cells, they're spreading the zombie-like stuff, and because you're not regenerating, you're degenerating. So when we look, at an aged face, we're seeing very deep lines and wrinkles. Those are senescent cells failing to regrow the matrix back there, not making collagen, not making elastin, not filling in the cells. The skin is getting thinner and wrinkled. So that's just one of the outer manifestations of aging.
Right.
And so there we see a toxin leading to aging. So that's the gerontogen, and that's just one of many, many toxins.
So
that do
cadmium it's a heavy metal, right?
Cadmium's
Where are
heavy
people picking
metal.
that up from? The environment, or?
Yeah, there's some in the food supply. There's some in bad water. There's dark leafy greens tend to attract cadmium.
Love that.
Kale is a gerontogen.
Yeah.
It's a goitrogen and a gerontogen. It's a double gem.
Oh my God! Yeah. So kale is not your friend, as they may have told you at one time.
A lot of bad, cheap jewelry,
So
cheap
all kinds of
metals
things.
will do that.
So
a lot of things. But I mean, so many different toxins. Every one of them is going to go in and monkey with the system.
Right.
Maybe it's just drawing down glutathione. But glutathione is totally necessary for maintenance of the telomeres, for correct anabolic to catabolic ratios, and all the regeneration and the health of the immune system. So all these toxins affect the age all these different ways.
Yeah. So it's all about rate of aging. Now, so other than cadmium, what would you say are the top 5 things that people really should keep their eye on as far as gerontogens go, which are essentially, it's another great word for toxins, but these are toxins that are specifically driving the aging process.
That are driving the aging process. Mold is a big one. I mean, we're all into heavy metals, and in the heavy metals, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, and lead are all doing that to different degrees, in different ways, but they're all accelerating aging. Mold toxins, everybody's obsessed with mold now. Mold has so many different ways in which it ages you, including shutting down the detoxification system that's supposed to get rid of it and all the other toxins. So once you got mold in you, you're susceptible to all the other toxins. So everything's growing in there. And then we often, there's lots of pesticides, herbicides. Glyphosate is a big one because glyphosate is driving excess glutamate activity in the brain. Glutamate is necessary for like being on it and sharp, but it's putting you into a more sympathetic dominant autonomic tone. And you need that when you got to be on it for survival and getting your job done and everything. But then you got to be able to relax, go over to GABA tone or parasympathetic, rest, digest, repair, regenerate, detoxify. So any of these toxins that keep you jacked into the sympathetic are increasing the rate at which you age. Stress itself is a gerontogen.
Catabolic.
Yep.
Puts you in a catabolic state.
Well,
driving up cortisol.
It will drive up cortisol. It will downregulate detoxification. It will block bile flow. It blocks regenerative programs. Because when you're in fight or flight, you're not thinking, oh, I think I should detox right now while I'm running away from the tiger.
No.
I think I should, regrow some things. I should probably lay down some more collagen. Mm-hmm. No, none of that stuff happens.
I need to get my butt out of here, so we live to fight another day.
Yep. Burn energy to get out of there. And so there's a deprioritization of regenerative programs in the body, and there's prioritization of getting out of there. So anything that puts us over there is doing that, and some of these toxins do. But one of the main things is a internally generated toxin. It's not that we're generating, but it's coming from us. It's called endotoxin. Endotoxin is little pieces of bacterial cell walls of certain anaerobic bacteria, or gram-negative bacteria, not necessarily anaerobic. And when they get into circulation, if that, like an E. coli, has endotoxin. If E. coli was in the blood, this would be a really bad thing. It's all over your GI, but if it was in the blood, that's going to be a septic infection.
Okay.
Your immune cells have exquisitely sensitive receptors for the chemistry of that membrane, so it would know, oh my God, here's this E. coli, we gotta go kill this thing. It doesn't realize it's not a whole E. coli, it's just part of it, but it sounds the same alarm as if there was a whole E. coli in there. So your immune system is tricked into thinking you have a systemic infection, and it fans the flames of inflammation. Now, what that does, see, inflammation and detoxification are fundamental opposites. Inflammation is part of a pro-oxidant expression. When that bacteria is in there, how do you kill it? You make hydrogen peroxide, you make superoxide, you make hypochlorous acid, which is bleach, and your immune cells are throwing this thing at the invader to kill it. Now, if you're going to do that, you go flip into that pro-oxidant chemistry, what you do is suppress or downregulate the antioxidant chemistry.
Right.
So you don't want to be making the antioxidants to quench the oxidants when you want the oxidants to kill the creature.
Correct.
And detoxification is part of the antioxidant system.
Right.
I often call it antioxidant detoxification protein repair super system, or chemoprotection system.
Right.
So you turn that down when you turn up inflammation. So what if this endotoxin is just going into you all the time? You're chronically turning down detoxification. You're doing that at a cellular level. The cells, when there's a toxin inside the cell or, next to the cell, attached to the cell, if the chemoprotection system is working, it's not going to exert its toxic effect. It's going to be constantly metabolized, conjugated to something like glutathione, pushed out of the cell. The cells are pushing away, protecting, pushing away, protecting. Then you turn that down, and then those toxins that were right there, right in, opportunistic, they hit their targets, they create that. But then at a more macro level, and I'll often talk about like microcosm and macrocosm detox. The microcosm is the cell pushing toxins away and away. The macrocosm, once they're in circulation, is the liver, the kidneys, the GI, harvesting toxins and dumping them out. Now when the endotoxin gets into the liver, as I was lecturing this morning, I was talking about coupling bile flow to detoxification. So the liver needs to be able to grab the toxin and dump it into the bile, through the bile transporters, into the bile tree, and drain it out of there. The endotoxin blocks that path out of the liver. It's called intrahepatic cholestasis versus extrahepatic cholestasis. Extrahepatic is a gallstone blocking bile flow.
Got that.
Fred. Intrahepatic cholestasis is when you block the secretion of bile out of the hepatocyte. Intra is inside the liver. So endotoxin blocks that. Then all of a sudden there's an accumulation in the cell, in the hepatocyte, of toxins, free radicals, and bile salts. And bile, if it's not being moved through the liver all the time, will actually digest the liver. And so
amazing.
You got all that stuff in there, and you've got to dump it out, and you throw it back into the blood. So the liver, the endotoxin is blocking the cell's ability to neutralize the toxins and get them out, and the liver's ability to process them and move them through. In the kidneys, it blocks the same transporters. There's the same transporters called OATP and MRP2 in the liver, and those are also in the kidney. And so those all got blocked by endotoxin. The cell gets blocked by endotoxin, and neuroinflammation is most easily catalyzed by endotoxin. Neuroinflammation, you go back to this glutamate receptors going into this sympathetic dominant mode. Neuroinflammation, you have a stimulation of immune cells in the brain. Immune cells in the brain are usually pretty peaceful characters. They're there for synaptic pruning or neuroplasticity, create new pathways. But when they're activated and become activated microglia, they start secreting pro-inflammatory cytokines like a peripheral immune cell will. And those start burning up the brain. They work on the glutamate receptors to get the glutamate receptors hyperactive. The glutamate, or the neuron then, with the glutamate receptors, starts secreting other molecules that reactivate the microglia. So it's a self-propelling neurotoxicity. That's a real problem. So how do you get endotoxin? We just said it's like a flamethrower inside.
Yeah. Driving aging, big time.
Major gerontogen.
Big time.
So what's our biggest common source of endotoxin? It's leaky gut.
Okay.
Hence why fixing the gut is like, people are just really good at fixing the gut but really can't do anything else with your body, get good results.
Yeah.
Because it's so
Absolutely.
fundamental.
Absolutely.
So when there's
First step.
inflammation in the GI, maybe it's a food allergy, maybe it's dysbiosis, maybe it's just bad food, toxic food, maybe it's the glyphosate on there. Mm-hmm. You stimulate a breakdown of the tight junctions between the cells. So you have all these cells and they're like sealed together, and so the tube of food becoming the tube of shit doesn't go into the blood. And then these things get like dissolved and leaky, and these little parts of endotoxin go in there, undigested larger proteins, lots of different stuff gets in there that generate this inflammation. So having a bad GI tract is aging you rapidly. And if that were the only thing, that would be one, but there are other sources that we miss. Chronic UTIs are really big spikes in endotoxin into the system. Anytime you're sick, I mean, even COVID, you're getting endotoxin in the system, you're getting inflammation in there.
Go back to the chronic UTIs for a minute. Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Like, I hear that a lot from my community, and
and you're going to hear that.
And they are hard to get. Like, once you get, you get women who've never had a UTI, then you get women who's like, oh, I had one once, it was the worst. And then you have women where this is the
every other month
bane of their existence.
Yeah, and especially at a certain age you get that. So postmenopausal. All right, so why is all that? Mm-hmm. This is estrogen signaling to tighten it. It's also some of it's testosterone, but it's hormone signaling that's tightening up the whole urinary tract. Okay. So, estrogen in women, you have estradiol as your main powerful estrogen.
Yep.
And then that's converted to estriol. So diol, there's 2 OHs, triol, there's 3 in the liver. And then it's brought to the kidneys and you pee it out. So all along your urinary tract, you have estrogen receptors that are specific for estriol.
Okay.
And the vaginal tract is also specific for estriol. It's like there's a leak of, it's like don't wipe too clean because, your estriol is feeding the receptors in the vagina. And so in the urinary tract, it's keeping the tight junctions together. It's keeping resilience to the tract, and it's keeping the sphincter closed.
Okay.
So like the urinary leaking is also stuff coming back the other way, retrograde. Those are mostly E. coli things coming in from, basically fecal contamination. So estriol is a big thing. Like if you're a woman, if you're supplementing enough estradiol, you'll make estriol and it'll be fine. But if you don't want to use a lot of estradiol, if you're worried about breast cancer risks, even though those aren't as bad as anybody thinks they are, we just had Lindsay, I forgot her last name right now, speak at our Colorado Functional Forum about the reinterpretation of the Women's Health Initiative, and actually estradiol was totally protective, it was not a cancer generator. But you can take estriol, and estriol feeds the urinary tract and the vaginal tract. And so in the vaginal tract, you have vaginal atrophy. That's the drying out and the shrinking of the tissue, the atrophying of the tissue, and then you get that whole prolapse.
Yeah.
And that's all estrogen signaling that keeps that all taut. And so estriol works only, you get all the pelvic benefits without the other stuff. And estradiol does everything and then converts and goes out. So that's why most women take Biest.
Yeah.
Biest is estradiol and estriol. In our topical series, we have estradiol alone and estriol alone, and we'll have a Biest.
Okay.
And so you can mix and match whichever way you want.
That's interesting. So then these chronic UTIs are less driven, they're ultimately driven by bacteria, but it's really the environment has become degraded because of the loss of the right estrogen.
And then your barrier function's crappy and stuff is invading, and your immune senescence, we're talking about immunosenescence with age, a lot of that's hormone signaling, your immune system sucks, and you've got this constant biofilm in there that's always ready to activate, and then you knock it back, and then it just sits in there waiting for its next opportunity. So long term for those kind of treatments, you've got to get those estriol levels up and solid, or just lots of estradiol that will really help tighten that all up. And then long term use of D-mannose makes the lining of the bladder and the urinary tract more slippery, so that the bacteria can't adhere to it. So, and that's what's in cranberry, but cranberry has other things too. So you're going to take diuretics. You might take our kidney care. You might take cornsilk or dandelion or just cranberry, and then lots of D-mannose and lots of probiotics. And that tends, so long term you're moving the biofilm out, and then taking biofilm breakers. It's in the beginning, you should probably take lumbricanase, nattokinase, serrapeptase, those kind of things while you're trying to get on top of it. So you got hormone signaling, you got clearing, and you got biofilm breaking, and then you'll get back on top of it and create that resilience where you won't be seeing it over and over and over.
Nice. Well, ladies, you heard it here first. There's so little talk about this, and you go to your doctor and they throw an antibiotic at it.
Oh yeah.
And in the chronic
Here's
world,
another thing is cephalexin.
Oh, by the way. Yeah.
Here's your next 20 cephalexin. We'll just give, for 20 days of every month.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be fine.
You'll be fine, no problem.
All right, let's get back to our gerontogen. So this was just one of the sources of endotoxins.
So GI, UTI. The other big one is the oropharyngeal area.
Yes.
Periodontitis is a massive source of endotoxin.
Yeah.
So having the wrong bacteria in your gum space, periodontitis is acutely associated. Hey,
Sorry,
keep it
guys.
down out there.
There's a party back there. Yeah.
Is acutely associated with cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
And it's associated with depression. Why? Because what is depression? But it's a neuroinflammatory disorder. In fact, depression can be so nicely treated by staying away from inflammatory foods. I was bummed out that I was just at Wise Tradition, Sally Fallon's thing. I lectured there on the way here.
Oh, you did?
And it was really great because I lectured with Sally Fallon in 1998 at a biodynamic farming conference. I used to be a biodynamic farmer before I was a PhD guy.
You're kidding.
So yeah, seriously, that's like I have a
How
very
much kale did you
storied
grow,
past.
though?
Not a lot. I knew it was a goitrogen.
So you were at least on the first gen.
Yeah.
Gen 1.
Yeah, but Gen 1, kale's like, yeah, I got a little kale, but not much.
Yeah.
But how was
Weston
that
A.
all
Price.
coming? Weston A. Price. So, because Kelly Brogan was lecturing the day after I left, and Kelly Brogan's famous for getting women off depression meds by taking inflammatory foods away and getting them to have a more toned autonomic tone, breathing, Kundalini yoga, and some flower remedies, get some trauma out of there, and then we can get off the freaking meds. Boom, there we are. So, mouth, endotoxin, out of the periodontitis, brushing with the essential oils is really good. Our artemisinin and emulsion will take all that away and take your pockets away really fast. But that's, essentially why all those, toothpaste and everything were mint flavored. They used to have tons of essential oils in there. Yeah, and there's one of my favorite groups is the Dental Herb Company. Mm-hmm. Then you have Dental Sidon from Biobotanical Research. These are just, micromodulators for this inner space.
Yeah, there's actually another company called, you heard of Living Libations?
I've heard the name, but I don't know.
Anyway, it's Essential Oil Central, and her oral care stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Bomb.
Yeah.
Last place, up the nose. There's just all this junk going on up there. And then into the sinuses, there's just so much space for stuff to live. And so these nasal sprays that have essential oils, it'll burn more. Any way you can get up there and clear a lot of that. Even, neti potting and stuff.
I was going to say, like, the nasal rinsing's got to be
nasal
massive
rinsing, just saline is enough to really change the space. But if you don't want to kill some stuff off, you got to get in there with essential oils. They got silver sprays. There's all kinds of things to put up your nose.
Some beautiful things.
There's beautiful things.
There's beautiful
Did
things.
I tell you I'm going to Colombia? That's where I get my stem cells.
Oh, amazing. Your personal stem cells or your stash for...
That's where I personally go get them.
Okay.
Yeah, I go down to Medellin.
Nice.
That was a joke about things up the nose.
I know, I got you. I'm with you.
I'm with you. I'm tracking the whole thing.
I'm all in.
A little bump, and then we go to stem cells, and then we go to sick leave.
Okay, so back to, so we've got all of these sources of endotoxins.
Yeah.
And so now what do people do about it? So these are all aging, right? So on number one, they make you sick. To begin with, you're going to feel like crap now, right? You're either going to have a sinus infection, or you're going to have your gums are going to be inflamed, your brain's not going to be firing properly, you got leaky gut, you're got bloating, you feel like junk. Your immune system could be overactive. You could have autoimmune issues because your immune system gets so mad about being turned on all the time. It starts attacking other things it wasn't supposed to attack in the first place. Like it goes rogue.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's a person to do? Eat an anti-inflammatory diet. Yeah, we know that. Try to get rid of the glyphosate and all that stuff. We got that. But
so you're trying to get rid of
world.
Yeah, you're trying to get rid of exposure. Then you really have to embrace detoxification into your lifestyle. And I always say you have a formal period of detox, and you might be using one of our 1, 2, 3 month programs. You might be going 6 months. You got metals, they take a long time to get out. And you're doing things like these pushes of the liver and the binders, bringing in glutathione, supporting membranes, and you're integrating other things like infrared saunas and red lights into these protocols, sweating, peeing, moving, getting the lymph going, and getting all this stuff up at the same time, barrier function fixing. So now we're brushing with all the essential oils, we're irrigating the nose, we're taking care of our gut, getting the inflammatory foods out, we're giving it collagen to rebuild. We might be using classics like marshmallow root, slippery elm. My ex-wife had built this whole therapeutic marshmallow using original marshmallow root and collagen and we put a couple other things in it, and it was just beautiful. It tasted so good. I just haven't released it yet. She texts me every couple of weeks and says, "I think it's time for the marshmallow." I said, "I'm going to Weston Price." She goes, "They would love the therapeutic marshmallow." But marshmallow root, silvereal root, build that mucilage back in. The right probiotics help build that all together. And getting those toxins out is stimulating, especially if we're stimulating NAD, AMPK, and sirtuins. Those stimulate the closing of the tight junctions. So I said when we detoxify and we're doing these detox protocols, we're taking compounds that turn up the chemo protection system via NRF2, but they're also bringing up AMPK. We're also bringing in NAD and sirtuin activators, and that's resealing and resetting everything into a clean, true, clean burning situation. Mm-hmm. And then for more acute, you can bind up the endotoxin. And charcoal's really good for that.
So I talk to people all the time who are constantly using binders. So I'm curious about that. How often do people want to do the intense detox? Right? Yeah. So the push catch. Yeah. You've got a beautiful system right now. Yeah. Like you talked about it in this lecture. It was spectacular. Like month 1, month 2, month 3, you rebuild it. Yep. I'm sitting there thinking, how many people can really get away with just 1 month of each? Like for someone who's never done one of these deep resets, I'll call it a reset, right? And detoxification programs. Like how many people can do this for just 1 month and get away with it?
And be done.
Yeah. And
I mean, if they're new to it, like we have our new advanced push catch, and you can do a month 1, and then month 2 you get 2 boxes and you double the dose.
I see.
And it's getting to these high dose periods that really flush out and reset. Or Cube 2.0 is our Cadillac. That's a 9-week program titrating from low up to very high doses and then back down a little bit. That's really what you need, 2 to 3 months to really start to reset. Some people need even more, but the 2 to 3 months of the intensive and then moving back to this sort of semi-continuous use of binders and glutathione and
so that's kind of like your foundation. Like I always talk about what's your foundation and then what are you going to do sometimes. You're going to ramp it up other times, right?
There was a study, I found this years ago, and it came out of Russia, and it was like typewritten, typewriter style. It was old. And it was on the use of charcoal to extend age. And it might have been charcoal and something else, but they had these mice, and they just gavaged them with like couple times a week with this big thing of charcoal.
Yeah.
And the scientists were saying it's like creating a third organ of detoxification. It's making all the lining of the GI be a magnet for this stuff. Because I said most of the toxins go through the bile flow, but some are directly secreted into the lumen of the GI across there. And so the charcoal is going to keep you from enterohepatically recirculating, and it's going to take stuff right out direct. And it lengthened the life of these mice like 20%. And I'm like...
Just charcoal?
Yeah, just charcoal. And it was funny, I was like, at the time, I'm like, who are these guys doing this? Like, was this really legitimate? Because that's just awesome. And why was this lost? All right, so paper kind of falls by the wayside. The last couple of years, what's the most exciting thing right now in longevity as a product you can take that might be a peptide?
Like a Pitaline?
Yeah, bioregulatory peptides. Where did they come out of?
Organs, tissues, glands, Russia.
Yes.
And
the Russian Institute of Gerontology.
Yes.
Guess where the charcoal paper came from?
Get out.
The Russian Institute of Gerontology.
It was Havinson?
No, it was just other dudes there. People. It's an institute.
A people.
Yeah, he's not the only guy. He's not the only jam there.
Yeah.
He's just the best.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm like Cavinson obsessed, and then I find the paper again. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's from the Russian Institute of Gerontology in St. Petersburg.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So here's the thing, and we were talking about this earlier, right? Because I talk about bioregulators all the time.
Yeah.
But guys, before you go blowing your budget on the bioregulators, you got to get the house in order.
Totally. This is
right?
what we
You
talked
gotta
about
get the
yesterday.
crap out. You gotta
Yeah.
reactivate the system. You gotta get the cell ready so that when the signal comes and
Turn on a
fires out
dime.
the DNA, everything's ready to rock.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the way.
Yeah, totally. You know, I see where the peptides just don't do anything
No.
in a blocked system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you get people taking a Pidilon and they're like, some people, the angels sing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Their circadian rhythm resets. They
Yep.
feel amazing. Your whole endocrine system
Yeah.
regulates. Your
Yeah.
telomeres, not that you feel those happening.
Yeah.
They can,
They're
you know, kind of,
lengthening.
their telomeres are growing. Everything beautiful is happening in the system.
Yes.
You get other people taking a Pidilon going, I got nothing.
I got nothing. Got nothing
Still
for
not
you.
sleeping.
Yes, feel like crap.
Feel like
So
crap.
then, you know, I would, before you start doing that, or before you start doing stem cells or exosomes, or even your hormone therapy, do 2 months of solid detox work. You know,
Yeah.
and that will set the cells up so they're responsive and they can turn and they can make that move.
I love it. And you know, and let's caveat this in saying, on top of the detox, sauna.
Yeah,
Get outside in the morning. Move.
yeah,
Like movement.
Yes.
Hydrate with clean water.
Yes.
Like again, like it's layers.
yeah.
And the foundation layer never changes.
Nope.
And we're just taking it up a notch, and the food. So
Yeah.
now, so tell me about what your thoughts on diet and food are. I'm curious about this. I know we didn't say
I
we
like
were going to
food.
talk about this.
Yeah.
I like food too.
See, I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
I was a farmer, and I was a chef, and I'm a chemist, and chemists are all good chefs. Like,
Of course.
I'm exquisite with the food.
Yeah.
And that sometimes takes me, like, if my son and I are gonna like have a cooking moment, you know, there's nothing he likes more in the world than a really good green chili mac and cheese. And so that's my dose of inflammagens for the day. So I'm just getting my
You
sins.
can mitigate it.
I'm getting my sins out on the table here. So I'm willing to do those things, and I'm willing to have soul food times. But then my day to day,
Yeah.
you know, I don't eat in the morning. It's funny. I have a Tibetan monk that lives in my house.
That must be interesting.
He's pretty cool. He's a bunk pup, you know. But he likes a big breakfast, and it was like, Chris, eat, you know, and. You know, none of them are vegetarians, so it works with me. He drinks my coffee, loves espresso, he cooks with meat and vegetables, and then he, you know, foregoes a couple other things. Anyways,
Whatever.
you know, he's eating in the morning. I'm never eating in the morning, so I don't eat until lunch. Lunch usually, depending on where I'm at in regenerative versus cleansing, I am going to do a fair amount of carbs after stem cells, after exosomes,
Yeah.
because I'm anabolic then. I'm trying to regrow. Yeah, so don't be afraid of the carbs then. But if I'm cleansing, then lunch is going to be like a salad and maybe a little bit of protein, and then dinner's sort of omnivorous. But you know, vegetables, clean proteins, broths. You know, it's not all that complex.
Yeah. What about fats? What's your position on fats? Because fats are important.
Love
They're
them.
super important for cell membrane. They're
Yeah.
super important.
I'm a huge
As a matter of fact,
fat.
even for bile, right? Like
Yeah,
gallbladder will get really
totally.
sludgy without fat.
If you don't, yeah, because it's stimulating the letdown of the bile. That's, you know, why they joke that French fries are good with a hangover. It's the fat that makes the bile go, that gets rid of
Although it is
last
toxic
night's
fat,
stuff.
but, you know.
Yeah, no, we're not going to say that's good, but it's because the fat makes the bile flow go. So what kind of fats? So, because I cook a lot, there's a lot of high temperature stuff. So in the vegetables, you're pretty much left with avocado. And yeah, I do believe in staying away from the seed oils. You know, I don't run for the hills, but I don't run to them either.
Yeah. What about the
And
animal fats?
then animal fats, yeah. You know, I love butter, I love ghee, I love duck fat. I will use some tallow, but I just don't groove on that as
like
much.
the taste of it.
Yeah, it's too much like a
yeah.
burned steak or something.
Well, it tastes like animal.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love.
I don't,
my
it just
meat.
doesn't
It just
feel.
doesn't
It
work.
doesn't.
And the
it
mouthfeel
doesn't-
is nasty when it cools.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's nasty when it cools off, and I don't know. I just don't groove with it, even though I eat a lot of meat. But the duck fat, I slather that on there, and of course ghee, coconut oil. I don't do as well personally with coconut.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I can't drink coconut milk, coconut oil. I'm like,
I use monolaurin though.
Yeah. Well, then that's just a tiny little fraction acting as an antiviral.
Yeah.
So that's my food thing.
Food philosophy.
Food philosophy,
Nice.
and then trying to be seasonal. It's so weird. It's all so perverted now.
Well, there's no season anymore.
No.
And then when you're traveling like you do,
Yeah.
and it's a different season everywhere you go on a given week.
Yeah, and
like
you're
what you
eating
do.
what is in front of you. It's like, oh, I'm eating the hotel food tonight, and
Binders.
Yeah.
So let's talk about mitigation.
Yeah,
Right,
and
so-
you were bringing up people who take binders all the time, and
Yes.
one of the people, some people, well, aren't you going to take all the good stuff out?
Yes.
Well, if you don't put it in with the good stuff, it doesn't just suck things out of your body.
So how much spread do you need? Let's talk about, these are commonly asked questions,
Yeah.
right? Like if I take my supplements, how
Yeah.
long do I need between that and my binder?
It's all about gastric clearance of the binder. The binder has no caloric value, so it's not like you're going to sit there and put all the enzymes in to digest it, and it takes 2 hours for gastric emptying. It gets out in 30 minutes. It just passes right through.
Okay.
So we wake up and we take, if we're doing the detox, we do our liver sauce, maybe the kidney drainage and the glutathione, whatever else we're taking from the liposomes there. 30 minutes later, we take the binder. So we call that push catch. Stimulate the cells to dump into the blood, the liver to pull from the blood, the liver to dump with the bile. 30 minutes later, come in and bind it. 30 minutes later, eat.
Okay.
Have your supplements and stuff then. Now, you raise that to 40, you're hedging your bet, you're doing a little bit better, but this whole 30 minute to 1 hour window where you're doing this stuff, it's easy for people to comply.
Amazing.
But it's not like 2 hours.
So is
we
it-
say that about your pharmaceuticals because
Yes.
we don't want to be liable for anything.
Right.
But it's really, 30, 40 minutes, you're good.
Okay. And so let's talk about how should people, I know people who take binders all the time.
Yeah.
Like people will take binders at bedtime.
Yeah.
The 2 Bs, binders at bedtime.
Binders at bedtime are awesome. We started putting ours in capsules so you can just
Yeah.
throw some of those down before you go to bed. And then they're working through the GI, cleaning it up, getting it ready. One of the things you do when you pull the toxins away from the GI, it signals to your body that, oh, okay, we're all clear here, and then we can dump all this stuff from the tissues. If we don't create that, toxin-free space in the GI, I haven't identified it molecularly, but I see that there's a signaling back to the body not to release the toxins.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so you go and you clear at night, and then the body's ready in the morning to just go up and do
Well, and
everything.
there's so much going on at night.
Yeah.
Right, in the body. There's just
Yeah.
so much work going on. So at some level,
the whole
you're
brain
just-
drops all of its load, and then
Yeah.
60% of the volume of the brain drains.
It's
What?
amazing. Brain drain.
I thought when Dietrich Klinghardt said that, I thought he was just, Dietrich is an embellisher. And I was like, yeah, that's a Dietrich story. And I look it up. I'm like, oh my God, it's not.
He's right.
He's right.
Who would have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk
Klinghardt,
it?
Kevinson, those K
One
guys.
of these guys, no.
These guys, yeah, they know a lot. it turns
The
out.
K guys.
Anyway, you know a lot too. Thank you so much for this today.
Thank
This has
you.
been amazing.
It's been a great one.
Very overdue conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right.
And it's been an absolute pleasure.
If not a noisy one.